"You're useless," he would tell me when he was angry. "A cripple. All you do is take up space." Those words stung, but I had grown used to them.
I've always known I wasn't like other children. My legs didn't walk the way they were supposed to, and it made every step harder than the last. My father, however, never treated me like I mattered. He saw me as a burden, something to hide away in the corner when guests came over. My mother was dead, and with all her passing, I was left with just my father. But it seemed like he resented me even more for her death. When I turned 14, my father's frustration reached a boiling point. He was deep in debt, and the pressure from loan sharks was beginning to suffocate him. Then came an offer that changed everything. It started with a stranger, someone my father had met through a business deal. He came to our house, his eyes scanning me with an unsettling interest. "You know," the man said, "I can offer you a lot of money for her. You will never have to worry about the debt again." I didn't understand at first. I overheard them whispering late into the night. The man's words were like a dull echo in my head. But then it clicked. "My daughter?" My father's voice trembled with hesitation. "You want me to sell her?" The man smiled coldly. "Yes. People like her, disabled, unwanted, can be very valuable. You'll be doing her a favor, really, giving her a chance at a better life." I felt a wave of panic rise in my chest. I was being sold like property. And worse, my father was considering it. The night my father agreed to the deal, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the murmurs of voices outside my room. The man was coming for me the next morning. "Don't make things harder than it needs to be," my father said as he entered my room. His eyes were cold. "You'll be taken care of. I will get the money we need and we'll be free from this mess." His words made my stomach turn. He wasn't sending me away to be cared for. He was selling me for his own benefit. "I never wanted this," I whispered. "I didn't ask to be like this. But you're my father. You're supposed to protect me." He didn't respond. He just walked out of the room. The next morning I was gone. The man took me far away from the only home I had ever known, and my father never looked back. The money was in his hands, and it felt like everything I had ever known had been erased. But what he didn't know was that I wasn't just a helpless girl. I had my own strength, my own will to survive. Months passed. I was kept in a place that felt like a prison, surrounded by other girls like me, children abandoned, unwanted, and forced to live in the shadows. I hated it, but I learned to adapt. I made friends, other girls who had been cast aside like I had. They had their own stories of betrayal, of parents who had sold them for money, and we all comforted each other. But I never stopped thinking about my father. How could he do this to me? And how would he live with the consequences? As the months went on, my father's life began to crumble. The money he received didn't bring him peace. It didn't fix his problems. The loan sharks came back for more, and they were ruthless. His business collapsed, and he lost everything. I heard rumors. He was struggling to keep his head above waters, drowning in debt. He tried to start over, but it was too late. The guilt of what he had done to me haunted him every waking moment. One night I received a letter. It was from him. "Forgive me, my daughter. I should never have sold you. I thought the money would fix everything. But now I see I've lost more than I could ever gain. Please, if there is any part of you that still loves me, please forgive me. I wanted to cry, but I also wanted to scream. He had taken everything from me, and now he was asking for forgiveness. Years passed. I eventually escaped the horrible place I had been taken to. I found a new family, one that cared for me, who didn't see me as a burden but as a person. But then I received a call from someone I least expected. My father. He was dying, alone, and he needed me. You are the only family I've left, he said, his voice cracking with regret. Please, come home. I've made mistakes, but I need you now. I stood at the crossroads. The anger inside me was still fresh, but so was a part of me that once loved him. I was older now, wiser, and perhaps ready to face him. When I arrived at my father's house, I barely recognized it. The mansion had turned into a crumbling shell of what it once was. My father, frail and weakened by years of regret, sat in a chair, staring at the empty walls. Lily, he whispered when he saw me, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but if you can find it in your heart to forgive me, I will die in peace. I looked at him, my heart a mixture of hatred and compassion. Could I forgive him? Could I let go of the pain he had caused me? After a long pause, I made my decision. I knelt before him, holding his hands. I forgive you, but I will never forget what you did to me. I've lived my life because I chose to. You didn't take that away from me. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I am sorry, Lily. I am sorry. As I sat beside my father's frail form, the weight of the past seemed to lift slightly, though it would never completely disappear. His apology had been heartfelt, but it was too little, too late. The years of abandonment, betrayal, and the suffering couldn't be erased by a few simple words. Yet, in that moment, I realized that forgiveness wasn't for him. It was for me. I had spent so much of my years consumed by the pain of his betrayal, but I also spent years growing stronger. My survival, my happiness, my family, they were all proof that I didn't need his permission to live a full life. I forgive you, but I'll never forget. I whispered again, this time more to myself than to him. There was no anger in my voice, just a quiet acceptance that I had become the woman I was because of everything that had happened. As he passed away shortly after that, his face softened, finally at peace. I couldn't bring myself to cry for the man who had sold me, but I allowed myself to grieve the man he could have been. The funeral was small, almost forgotten in the shadows of his past. But for me, it wasn't just an end, it was a beginning. I didn't go back to the life of betrayal and regret. I walked forward into my own. I had found a new family, one that saw me for who I was, not for my disability. And as I stepped into the next chapter of my life, I carried with me the lessons I had learned, that I could survive without his approval, that forgiveness was not a sign of weakness but strength, and the love I had for myself was the only thing that truly mattered. I didn't need to live in his shadows anymore. I had become my own light.